Hey guys, so this is Rachel here giving you my final oral presentation for EPSY7210 for the summer of 2017. So I guess I will get started over here. So to begin, we had to cover two objectives that we think that we have met this summer from this course. So the first that I want to point out is recognize prejudice and oppressive institutional structures in education that marginalize gifted students from culturally diverse backgrounds, specifically race, class, gender, and language issues. So coming into this class, I felt as though, especially in comparison to my peers, I recognize these prejudices at a lot higher rate. Because I'm coming from a math background and in math department, these issues of equity aren't talked about as much as I think other programs in the education department, just because our focus again is a lot on content, because there's just a lot for us to cover and effective ways to cover those things. So coming in and coming from that background, I felt that I was doing a lot better than the majority of my peers. But as I've gone through this class, I recognized these prejudice more and developed the recognition and of these inequities even more. And these four things that I've listed really helped me to develop those things. So the first and probably the biggest thing that helped push me to recognize these prejudices more, and that the biggest thing that I'll probably take away, is Ford's equity formula. And basically, as a recap for those of you who don't remember, basically she states that of a within a school district, there should be 80% of a race's or percentage represented in gifted programs, at least 80%. So again, translating that into more concrete terms, say we had a 30% representation of black students in a certain school district. We should expect no less than 24% of students, 24% representation of black students in a gifted program. And so again, you take 20% of 30%, which would be 6%, and you subtract that off of 30, and you get the 24. So again, that's the 80% representation that I was talking about. And I guess prior to really having this concrete formula for me, I didn't really notice the inequities in terms of representation in accelerated classrooms within my high school experience as well as in my student teaching experience. But I can definitely say that this equity formula has caused me to realize that there could be potential discrimination, whether intentional or unintentional, going on in those two school systems that I mentioned. So for example, I know I talked about this in one of my discussion posts, but in Clark County, that's where I taught at Clark Central. There's over a 50% representation of black students in the school system. And I taught at the highest level of math that a student could take in freshman year. And it was accelerated coordinate algebra. And well, I remember, again, after I saw this concrete formula, that there was a significant underrepresentation of these students. Because again, 50%, over 50% of the population was black. I can say with certainty, again, not specific certainty, but without unwavering certainty, that less than a third of the students in my accelerated classroom were black, which again just points to me that there was an equity issue. And then furthermore, I saw a hyper overrepresentation of black students in support classrooms, which they usually made up over 90% of those classrooms, which again goes to show that something was happening that shouldn't have been happening. And I know going forward, I'm going to take that equity formula with me. And again, that was brought up in the U46 case that we talked about. And just hearing about that case to know that it's like, okay, it's not just in the South, which again, we have our history and the racial divides that are here, but it's also all across that this is happening. So it doesn't necessarily make me feel better, but it made me, I guess, it opened my eyes a little bit more that it's not just something that needs to be attacked here. The recognition of these prejudices and discriminatory acts that could be going on, but that goes on everywhere. And then also one thing that really helped me to recognize this was the tracking that Wells and Cerno talked about, both in their presentations and in their articles. I think that's something that sometimes got pushed under the rug, just because it's, again, like, oh, we're having integrated schools and things are happening, but the different levels usually segregate students, which again goes in hand with Ford's equity formula. Are we having the proper amounts of representation in all tracks? And if we aren't, why is this occurring? And then finally, the thing that also goes hand in hand with the tracking was Calhoun County. Honestly, as much as it really, really bothered me to hear all these things from teachers, white teachers, and the white parents who supported this, it really did not surprise me that the higher-ups and the elite in Calhoun County felt this way, especially because, as I commented in the discussion, I was actually looking into Calhoun County just again when I was looking for jobs, and noticed that there was a 96% representation of African Americans in the school district, when, again, 22 years ago at this point, it was not the case, which again just points to white flight and how tracking has such an effect, and the discriminatory practices have such an effect on the complexities of the classrooms. But calling out and bringing light to these things, honestly, is only going to improve equity and cause for better classrooms. So I definitely think I met those goals, just because I'm taking what I learned and going forth into my classroom knowing that these things are realities. So, yeah. The second objective that I think I met was developing a plan to use multicultural approaches to address home, school, community relations that support gifted programs and empower students and their families. So the first that I wanted to mention was parental involvement, and so I know that I want to, moving forward, and we've talked about this, create opportunities to involve parents at higher levels. So during our Courageous Conversations discussion that the Summer Session 1 folks had, Mackenzie and Matthew brought forth a lot of Epstein's topology of family involvement, which again, that's on Ford's page 251, which discusses ways that families can get involved and the levels at which they are involved. I know Mackenzie pointed out how she brought in parents by having nights to feel as though that they have participatory roles in the classroom, which again, that is involvement and collaborating with community, versus what Matthew said, that he gave the parents the opportunities to be decision makers, which again leads to the decision making that's represented in Epstein's topology. And I know moving forward, that's something that I want to institute, having these nights to go forth and bring parents in to create involvement inside and outside of the classroom, as well as helping parents get involved in a way that makes them decision makers. The second is teaching with a multicultural framework in mind. I know prior to this class, I always had the goal of teaching for social justice, and I wanted to know how to do that better. And I think moving forward, especially learning about Banks's and Nito's just different forms of multicultural curriculum or education practices, that I've come to realize that there's many more ways to go about this that are productive for students. So I know I want to teach in a way that promotes social justice, just as Nito pointed out, but I also want to teach in a way that promotes transformation of curriculum and that has social action within it. So that goes and attributes to Banks. So I know moving forward, I will be able to pull forth a plan for within my classrooms and my lesson plans to institute these things. And then finally, become an advocate for diverse faculty. We've learned throughout this course that underrepresentation of minorities is not just in our gifted programs, but it's also among our teachers, and especially our gifted teachers. And I know moving forward, I think I really want to ensure that there's a representation of faculty in our program, in our school, because I think it's so important that our students see themselves in academia and that they see themselves as being capable. And I think one of the best quotes that pointed this out and really brought me to drew me to advocate was, the overrepresentation of black students in special education is mirrored to a degree by black teachers. Conversely, the underrepresentation of black students in gifted education is mirrored by black teachers, which was from Ford, Grantham, and Harris. And I think that also transferred into how there's an underrepresentation of diverse faculty in STEM fields, and I want to make sure that I bring forth a voice that advocates for more diverse faculty in my schools and especially in my department, because I think it's so important, again, to see this representation and to see that it's a valid and awesome option as a potential career for students to go into. Okay, so our third thing that we needed to cover was future plans. So I'm going to get into my first year of teaching, and my department head has already told me that I should go and get gifted certified, and I was very much planning on doing this, but I want to really, I of course am going to go and get gifted certified, but I want to incorporate these perspectives throughout the classes that I have to take in order to get that certification, because I think it's not talked about as much as it should be in gifted classes. So I think these perspectives are going to help me have a better education. I also want to be an advocate within my school and community for multicultural students. And one way that I really think I'm going to do that is I plan to advocate for the creation of and or be a part of a school a club within my school that is for minority students in STEM. Again, we see an underrepresentation of students in STEM, of minority students in STEM, and especially women of color in STEM. And I think that a creation of this will show that this is an inclusion process that can make it more accessible for students. And then I also plan to actively implement multicultural modes of teaching in my mathematics classroom. As I mentioned, I want to incorporate teaching for social justice and transformation of curriculum to ensure that students are learning both math but also how to change the world at the same time and how to approach inequities in the right way and using what they've learned in my classroom. So those are my 3 big future plans. So my 2 sources of networking and collaboration, these 2 wonderful people hired me. So before I go into them, I just wanted to say that because it's my first year of teaching, I think it's really important for me to focus on a local level rather than a global level, because I want to ensure that my first year students get a great education just as my 10th year students will. So first is Wes Hatfield. He's an assistant principal and I say department head. That's supposed to be AP department head. And so I'm teaching accelerated pre-calculus next year, which again, I'm going to have the highest students in my classroom. And they're going to be going into AP Calc AB or AP Calc VC, IB Math, or AP Statistics. And I want to ensure that I am promoting equity among my minority students as a way, and I want to collaborate with him as what way can I, as the first step into an AP department or an AP class, what can I do in order to uphold that equity? Second is David Custer. He's my math department head. He's also teaching pre-calculus with me, so I'm probably going to go to him for a lot of things. But I want to go to him as my first source of how do I create this club for STEM students and minority STEM students, because I think going to the source of, here, can you back me up on this? It'll actually make it happen, and I know he definitely was a big advocate for creation of new and innovative clubs and ideas, so I'm really hoping that going to him for collaboration will actually bring this idea to fruition. And then finally is our PTSA. Again, to involve parents more and to involve teachers and to involve students is so important, and I think coming to a local place where everybody usually is involved is a really easy way to do that in order to promote equity. But that's it for me, y'all. I appreciate you guys listening. Thanks so much.